All right, it's official. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are talking about the E-rate Form 471, specifically around Category 1 services. All right, we do have another date scheduled if you're looking at applying for Category 2. All right, but again, today we're just focusing on Category 1. Now, give me a second here. So here's our agenda. It looks rather lengthy, but as a resource, if you go back and you pull up a copy of today's presentation, I did put in the slide numbers. So if you need to go back and look up, a specific topic like month-to-month requests, right, make it a little bit easier to find some of this information. All right, but again, this is our agenda for today. We will start out talking about some filing basics, just some reminders, rules around the 471. Just real quick, getting into the portal, what that looks like. But keep in mind that when we file the 471, if you have a contract, we have to upload that before you can file the 471. Because once you get into the form, that's one of the first questions. It's how are you purchasing? If you say contract, well, you have to go point to the contract record there in the portal. All right, so we will be walking through what does that look like, all right, to add that contract. Then when we look at the 471 application, we're going to look at, I like to say, several different flavors. All right, what does it look like if you have a brand new contract? All right, contract for brand new funding request. What does it look like for month-to-month service? And I'll be explaining what that means. Well, what if you're in year 2 or more of a multi-year contract? All right, how does that look? Where you can copy from the previous year. Then we're going to talk about the really hot topic this year, the off-premise patron hotspots. All right, walk you through how to file the 471 for those hotspots. Now, when we get into the form itself, if you've ever filed the 471, you're going to notice some changes. All right, there are some additions to the form to accommodate for the hotspots and bus Wi-Fi. All right, so then we'll finish out this afternoon with completing the 471, actually getting it certified, submitted. And then the next steps, all right, what to be prepared for, once you submit that form. Now, as we go through, Christine and I both are watching chat. So if you want to put a question there, or feel free to unmute. It might be easier just to unmute and ask your question verbally. All right, we're good either way. All right, so let's jump in with the filing basics. All right, so the 471, this is where we're requesting discounts on the eligible service. This is where we list, specifically what we're buying, who we're buying it from, what's the cost, all of that detail. All right, and the 471 has to be filed every single year. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you're in year, 2 of a five-year contract. All right, the only relief we get is in filing that bidding form, the Form 470. Okay, we only file the 470 when we're asking for pricing, which would lead to, say, a new contract. All right, so 470, you don't necessarily have to file that every year. 471 every single funding year if you want E-rate funding. Now, keep in mind that if you are filing a new 470, all right, it has to be out there a minimum of 28 days before you can start evaluating the bids, comparing price, all right, and then, choosing a vendor. On the 29th day, then you can start, doing that evaluation, signing off on contracts, and then going through the 471. Now, when we file, let's say you're in that year 2 of a 5-year contract. All right, when we go to file the 471 each year, we're simply going to point back to the 470 that was filed before we actually awarded that contract. So you still have a 470 out there. It's just one that you file, like I said, could be 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever, before you enter that contract itself. Okay, so the all-important filing dates. So the window did open at noon on January 15th. It is set to close at 11:59 p.m. On March 26th. All right, so because that 470 has to be out there a minimum of 28 days, once we know the 471 deadline, we count back. That determines, to be able to determine the Form 470 deadline. So based on the March 26th 471 deadline, that means that you have until February 26th, all right, to file a 470. Now, I caution you, if at all possible, do not wait that long, all right? Because if you wait until February 26th to file the 470, that means the earliest you can start evaluating bids would be on that March 26th date. It's going to be a crazy day. It means that you're trying to evaluate the bids, getting contracts signed, all right, and then getting the 471 filed. It's doable, but it's crazy. All right, so if at all possible, don't wait that long to file a 470. I make that caution every year. Of course, everything that we do with E-rate, we do this in this in the Epic portal. All right, so make sure that if you've not logged into the portal in a while, make sure you can get in. You may need to reset your password. They expire about every 45 days. If you've had a changeover in staff, all right, will a new staff member need a login? If you do need a new a new user, USAC may need to get involved. If you do have an account administrator, basically in the portal, then that individual, they can still log in and add new user accounts. Some of the functionality, though, in the portal has been locked down. All right, so just be cautious. All right, if you need to make changes to users. Now, with the 471. You can file multiple applications. Just know that if you're going to apply for what we call Category 1, all right, and we'll talk about the change to the form here. Category 1, our traditional Category 1, that's data transmission and internet access. That includes if you're asking for a hotspot, say for a bookmobile or a kiosk, all right, that all fits under our traditional Category 1. But for this upcoming funding year, the FCC has added a new category. They're calling it Category 1, off premise. I'm referring to it almost as a Category 3. All right, so if you are going to apply for the hotspots for patrons, you're going to have to request that under this new Category 1 off premise option here. So if you are going to apply for, say, bandwidth for the branches, a couple of hotspots for the bookmobiles, that'll go on a traditional Cat 1 471, and then you would have to plan on filing a second Category 1 off premise for the hotspots. All right, and then we also have our Category 2. So if you're looking at buying that that connectivity equipment, okay. So if you're going to ask for bandwidth, patron hotspots, and something under Category 2, that means you're going to be required to file 3 different 471 applications. And Jeff, your comment in the chat about not able to log in after entering the MFA code, I literally jumped off of a call, the state E-rate coordinators group. We had our call with USAC, and we just reported that to USAC. It's a known issue. Apparently it's something that has just started. So USAC, like I said, literally our call was at 1 o'clock, but we reported this technical issue. All right, so hopefully by tomorrow you'll be able to log in and things are working. Not sure what's going on there. All right, but thank you for putting that in the chat. All right, so yes, USAC has acknowledged that there's a technical glitch issue right now when you're asking for the MFA code, that multi-factor. So just a heads up that they are working on that. All right, so back to when we file the 471, keep in mind that let's say you're asking for the bandwidth for the branches and those, say the hotspots for the bookmobile. All right, you could put multiple funding requests on the same 471. All right, as long as those services fall under that specific category. All right, so again, a single 471 can have multiple funding requests. All right, as long as it fits within within that specific category. Okay, entity profiles. I mentioned that USAC has locked down some of the functionality. Basically, the portal is now locked down. It will be basically effective January 9th. All right, so we call that the admin window. We have this period of time before the 471 window opens where we can go in, and update, say things like, changing addresses for our buildings, changing the square footage, All right, a lot of that detail. All right, but at 11:59 p.m. on January 9th, USAC locked down the portal in preparation of the 471 opening. Okay, so if there's information that you need to correct, like the square footage, all right, we still can go in and make corrections, but we do that in the narrative on the 471. That's a way of letting USAC know, here's the change that needs to be made. All right, but again, when we look at the 471, I'll show you, how to do that. Now, the school districts, they also had until January 9th to go in and update student enrollment and the National School Lunch Program information, those counts. If they did not get that information updated by the 9th, all right, then the discount rate that you're looking at in the portal, it's going to be based on last year's data. All right, so, just keep in mind that if the district goes back, puts the information on their 471, it may affect your discount rate. But this year, your discount rate probably won't decrease. All right, they've made some changes in how schools can provide free lunches to students within the buildings, and we've had a lot of our districts, all right, implement this new program. All right, so, and in most cases, it's increasing our discount rates. That's a lot of information, so let me know if you have any questions. All right, so I mentioned about contracts. So before you begin the 471, you want to make sure, if you haven't, that new contract, all right, that we get that uploaded in the portal. It's going to ask us some, specific questions like, did you file a 470? How many bids? Things like that. But it's very important that you do that beforehand. Otherwise, you're going to have to stop the 471, complete that step, and then go back into the form. And I'll show you what that looks like. So accessing the portal, most of you know this already, all right, but if you go to usac.org/e-rate, you're going to see that blue sign in button, all right, and then you're going to see what's called the dashboard, okay, it looks more like a paragraph, all right, it's really a menu option, so you're going to click on the first one that says E-Rate Productivity Center, EPC. And Drew, your comment about filing the 470 under category 1 rather than this new cat 1, that's not a problem. All right. On the form 470, we still see the traditional category 1, category 2, but under the traditional category 1, there were some options to indicate off-premise hotspots. All right, so you don't need to go back and refile your 470. You're good there. It's only when you go to do the 471 that we're seeing those big changes. All right, but again, thank you for that question. So no, you do not have to go back and get new bids. So we're good there. All right, now we mentioned, the comment I think Jeff made about the MFA, right? When you go to log in, every time you go to log into this portal, it's going to have you get that MFA code. And apparently that's where the system is hanging up. All right, I've been in and out of the portal today and I've not experienced that. I don't know if it's tied to the browser that you're using. I've been in and out today, but using Chrome. So again, I don't know if it's tied to the browser. But like I said, USAC's working on it. All right, so we're going to click here on this first paragraph for EPIC. All right, when you do that, it's going to take you to the landing page. And again, I know some of you, most of you have seen this, but just a few friendly reminders here. All right, you want to make sure that all of your entities, if you go down, there's a section in about the middle section of the landing page called My Entities. Make sure that, everybody's listed there. All right, make sure all the entities are there. All right, now for the most of what we're looking at today with let's say the contracts, we're going to start by under My Entities, clicking on the library. If you're a library system, all right, that's going to be the first thing in the list there. That'll denote the billed entity. Yeah, and Christine, your comment, having better luck with Chrome, same here. I mean, I've tried, different browsers. Chrome seems to be the most stable. All right, so I'm going to start by clicking on my library system, the first thing in the list there. Yeah, a couple of things that you want to check. All right, because you don't know if the district, went in and updated their enrollment numbers, all right, the lunch counts. So what I would suggest you do is once you click on your library system, or obviously if you're an independent library, all right, first thing listed there under My Entities, this will give you the summary information, all right, for your library system. All right, you'll see some menu options here. There's an option that says discount rate. So if you click there, it's going to show you, here's the enrollment, the total, combined enrollment for the district, right? Whatever numbers that were reported, how many students qualify for the National School Lunch Program. And then as you look across, then it's going to say, here's your category 1 discount rate, here's your category 2. Okay, so again, I suggest you check that just to make sure, did the discount rate change at all? All right, and also a reminder, if you are at the 90% for category 1, the highest discount rate, for category 2, you'll be at 85%. All right, anything below that, 80% below, it's going to be the same for both category 1 and category 2. Now, at the very bottom of the landing page, really important, it's going to show you, here is the sum of the square footage for all the libraries listed, all right, if you're a library system. All right, what's that combined square footage? Well, first we use that to calculate our category 2 budget. This year, though, it's really important because the FCC USAC is also using the square footage to determine what's your budget for the patron hotspots. Okay, so you want to make darn sure, okay, that all of that square footage is accounted for. All right, so if you see that those numbers are off, that's where you would want to go into, when you're filing the 471 in the narrative, make sure that, the square footage is correct. All right, because again, if you're going to be really, really tight on your budget, all right, you want every square foot, that you can account for. All right, we're not going to, since we're only talking about category 1 filings today, we're not going to get into cat 2 budgets, but we'll cover that during the category 2 training. All right, but do let me know if you have any questions about it. All right, so let's jump into entering contracts. All right, now if you, let's say you filed a 470 last year, you awarded, say, a new 5-year contract, that contract would already be in the portal. All right, so if you already have that multi-year contract in the portal, you don't have to do this step, okay, if you don't have any new contracts to upload. All right, so just a heads up, it gives you a little bit of a break there possibly. Okay, so to get into that contract module from the landing page, we click on the build entity. And Penny, your question there. Okay, so you're going to do a 9,300 square foot addition. I would go ahead and add that square footage now, Penny, just so that if you're asking for the patron hotspots, then USAC knows what the total square footage will be for this upcoming funding year. All right, and you get the benefit, both the Cat 2 funding as well as all of that added in, so you get the benefit for the hotspot budget. All right, you're more than welcome. All right, so when we talk about the multi-year contracts, I do want to point out here, I think most of you or many of you are aware, OPLIN filed a Form 470 asking for like 50,000 hotspots, all right, basically asking for the patron hotspots for the bidding purposes, all right, for all the libraries in the state, all right, to basically take care of that bidding portion. All right, so if you are going to, utilize that 470 pricing, all right, then we'll talk about what you need to do to get the formal contract, all right, but you need to be prepared to do that, and you would need to upload that in the portal as well. Okay, now if you are asking for what we call month-to-month service, that means where you're not locked into, some contract term. We see that, say, with some of the hotspots with the bookmobile. All right, or if you're using like a business class DSL internet access for a small branch, all right, oftentimes you're not locked into some contract term. We call that month to month. All right, that's another time you would not have to go in and create this, this contract, record. Okay, so we're going to click on the library system. Speaking of the OPLIN 470 bids, all right, just to give you just kind of a little overarching bit of information here. So OPLIN received 3 bids, okay, based on that 470. All right. So if you are looking at, purchasing off of that, all right, you still have to, because there were 3 bids received, you still have to compare those costs. All right. And construct a bid matrix to, show this is why you went with one provider over another. All right. And again, contracts have to be signed and dated before we file the 471. Now, in addition to the contract, just be aware that a lot of the cell providers, there's some other information they're going to need, some other documents they may want you to sign. Like, do you want bear or spy billing? All right. Are you going to pay the invoices in full and then file the bear form to ask for the reimbursement? Or do you want them to discount your bills? All right. A lot of the vendors, the cell providers, will have a specific form for that. They're going to need, if you already have, an account set up, you already use service, say for one of the providers, they're going to want to know your account information. All right. So again, there's some details that they're going to need to issue the contract. Okay, and Christine, I know you and Donna and I talked about this yesterday. I just wanted to share with everyone just a quick snapshot, all right? The pricing that was received for those 3 bids, all right? And I've reached out to the companies. If you do want to purchase off of this, all right, then you need to reach out to whichever contact is listed per provider, all right, and let them know that you want to move forward with a contract. You'll need to tell them how many, hotspots, if you want devices and service, all right. And it's reasonable to say we already have 100 hotspots. We just want the service covered, all right. Or you can say I want the service plus the hotspot devices. All right, but each of the 3 companies, I know it's a little blurry. Some of the text was very small in their document. All right, but we can see here for T-Mobile where they quoted $11.97. That's for the monthly recurring service. All right, great price there. And then the hotspot, the device, if you need more hotspots, $84. Remember that under E-rate, you could go up to $15 per month for the monthly recurring service and up to $90 for the device. Anything over the $90 will be out of pocket. All right. So again, there's the pricing for T-Mobile. We can see that AT&T, they have 2 options here. If you do an unlimited data plan, it's $15 per month. All right. If you do the 10 gig data plan, then it's $10 per month. Now they do have this listed here, their filtering option, the Access My LAN for $6. That's content filtering. E-rate does not cover that. All right. So so again, don't if you contract for that, plan on paying for that totally out of pocket. Right. And then here's their cost for the hotspot device. All right, it's the $90. The third quote came from CDWG, where they have partnered with a company called Khajiit, and then Khajiit can partner with cell providers like AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. Okay, and so they quoted for one of the hotspot devices at $68.90, and then the monthly recurring cost at $14.98. All right, so again, those are the 3 quotes, all right, that you would need to evaluate. And of course, you could file your own 470 if you choose. I've actually filed several. And to be honest, I've gotten some quotes back from T-Mobile quoting the exact same pricing. All right. So I don't know if you would get any lower price filing your own 470. So this would be a great way to go. Okay, so bid evaluations. All right, whether it's the hotspots, the patron hotspots. If you filed a 470, say for bandwidth for your branches, all right, remember you have to do a bid evaluation. E-rate rules state that price has to be the highest weighted factor, but you're not required to go with the cheapest bid, right? Basically, you can look at other factors. Okay, so we just look at these 3 bids for cell providers. Well, maybe T-Mobile, came in much cheaper, but that, you don't get very good coverage in your area. All right. So even though they're cheaper, it's not really going to do anything for you, right? If you don't get the service. All right. So again, construct the bid matrix. Out on my website on that resource page. All right. I do have, it's actually a 2-page document, a version for Cat 1 and a version for Cat 2. All right. A template out there, Word document, so you can change the factors however you choose. Okay. But we're looking at things. You can also adjust the point values as long as you can show that price has the highest number of points. All right. But I'm looking here at price, prior experience. Vendor provides adequate cellular coverage for our patrons. All right. If you want to give preference to a provider that will give you discounted billing, all right, if they agree to that, you can, basically give them points if they're willing to provide that discounted billing. And I'm reading Drew's comment here. Yeah, and Drew, that's a good point. So, they may quote you some other hotspot devices, all right? So that could give you some options for some different devices, all right? But just remember, because I actually just saw one where there was a device that was like $250, $280, all right? Just know that if you go with a device, remember, E-rate will cover up to $90 times your discount rate, all right? So if you go with a device, let's say is $120, all right, that $30 overage is automatically going to be out of pocket. Yeah, and Christine, thank you for that note. So please, if you want the full copies, all right, of those hotspot bids, send Christine an email and she can send you the full documents. All right, so again, just make sure, right, do the bid matrix, sign it, and then you keep this in your files. All right, you don't immediately send this to USAC. Keep it in your files should you ever, be questioned. Okay, so now how do we upload these contracts? All right, so we click on the build entity under My Entities, and then that series of menu options, you'll see where it says contracts. All right, so we'll click there. It's going to show me, all of the contracts that are already, sitting out there in the portal. All right, now I did make a note here. Keep in mind that once a contract has been added, once you hit submit or complete, you cannot go back and edit the information. You cannot delete it. So if you go back and you see that there's a whole lot of old contracts, they're in the system forever. Okay. We cannot go back and delete or make any changes. So as we go through these steps, make sure, go back, double check, make sure everything's correct. Because if you hit complete and it's submitted and then you realize you made a mistake, you have to start it all over again. Been there, done that, never makes me happy. Okay. All right. So once we click on contracts, like I said, we see the list, and then in the upper right, you'll see where it says manage contracts. All right. So we'll click there. All right. Then it's going to show us, okay, well, there's two different, options here. There's the contracts you've already submitted or contracts that are in draft mode. Keep in mind that as we go through all of these steps, all right, if you're, midway through, uploading a contract and, you get interrupted, you can save and close and then come back to your draft version of the contract, pick up where you left off. All right. So just keep in mind, you don't have to complete it, in one sitting. All right. So I'm going to click on the blue button where it says add a new contract. So when I click there, everything, it seems like in this portal, wants a nickname. All right. So make it something descriptive. All right. That, you'll be able to pull this from a list later, or someone coming in behind you. All right. Will understand what's included in this contract record. All right. So you can put in the name of the provider. You can put in the term that it's covering. You can say FY2025 to FY2030. All right. Again, make it descriptive. Now, for the contract number, that is not a required field. If your contract happens to have a number and you want to, put it on there, fine, not required. All right. So I'm going to click on save and continue. All right, so now it's asking, do you want to upload a copy of the contract? So again, make sure you've done the bid evaluation, and any contract that you upload, you need to make sure that it's been signed and dated. All right, because again, that's what the reviewers are going to look at. All right, now we do have the option to say no here. All right, but if you indicate no and you don't upload it, that's a guarantee that the reviewers are going to be knocking at your door, all right, saying, oh, we need this information. They're going to want to know, what's the service? What's the cost? When was it, what's the date it was awarded? What's the contract term? All right. So by going ahead and uploading it, you've already, provided a lot of that information. So it really does cut down on the review questions that you'll get. So I would suggest get it signed, dated, and get it uploaded. All right. So here I'm going to say, yep, I'm going to do the upload thing. Okay. Upload that document. Now on the right-hand side, we can be more descriptive. All right. If you choose, again, it's not a required field. All right. We've already given it a nickname, that's pretty descriptive. You can give some more detail here if you choose. Okay, but again, like I said, that's not required. Then I come back to save and continue. Now, let me back up here. I do want to point out, some contracts, I see this more for the schools than I do on the library side, but let's say you have a contract for your bandwidth, and that contract allows for you to increase your bandwidth during the term of the contract. All right, again, there are some contracts out there that will allow that. Okay, well, the vendor may give you an addendum that says, okay, you're agreeing that you're going to upgrade your bandwidth, let's say from 500 meg to a gig. All right, so they may give you an addendum showing the cost, all right, and that information. If you have that, occur, take that addendum document, attach it to the original contract, and upload it again. All right, so that way, again, the reviewers have the most current information. Now, if you are uploading an addendum with that original contract, when we get to the questions about the Form 470, did you file a 470? You're going to point back to the 470 that you originally filed. All right, but again, just a heads up, if you have those addendums, any of those changes, attach that to the original contract. And again, let me know if you have questions on that. All right, so once we click on continue, it's going to ask us a series of yes, no questions. So is this contract based on a state master contract? Yes or no? All right, look at the contract that you're, awarding. All right, if you're not sure, check with the service provider. All right, typically the answer is no, but again, just verify that. Then it's asking, is this contract based on a multiple award schedule? Again, typically the answer is no. All right, now you'll notice the little blue circle there with the question mark. All right, if you want to get a little more information, what is this referring to? All right, just click on the question mark. All right, I'll click on save and continue. All right, now it's asking about piggybacking contracts. All right, when you first get to the screen, you're only going to see the one question. All right, that very first question. Can other applicants piggyback off of this contract? All right. If OPLIN had, if OPLIN decided, okay, we're going to award a contract with one of the cell providers that, all of our libraries can purchase off of that contract, all right, then you would answer yes here. All right. Well, they're not doing that. It's up to you to go contract on your own. All right. For those hotspots. All right. So we're going to answer no. And again, that's, the typical correct answer for most services. When you do that, then it's going to pop up a second question. Basically, was this contract originally created by another applicant? All right, again, the answer would be no. All right, save and continue. Okay, so this is kind of, I call this the meat of the contract record. All right, this is where it's asking the questions about, did you file a Form 470? All right, so initially it's going to ask that yes, no question. Now, when we get further in, we'll talk about, the only service where you don't have to file a 470. All right, is what we call that Cabio service. All right, we'll be talking about that here in a little while. All right, so was the 470 filed? Yes. All right, to the right of that, how many bids were received? So if this is that contract for the patron hotspots based on OPLIN's 470, all right, you would indicate that there were three bids. Now it is asking, was the 470 filed prior to 2016? The EPIC Portal, all right, we started using that in 2016. If there was a 470 file prior to that, the system can't see it, all right? USAC did not upload all of that archived information, all right? So if you're pointing to an old 470, I don't know of any service out there where you would be, all right? But if you indicate yes here, then you need to be prepared to put in that old 470 number, which was like 15 digits long, all right? So for most of us, that answer is no. Okay, so now it's going to ask us to search for that posted 470. All right, well, let's say this is bandwidth for, our branches. The default is to search by your build entity number. All right, it's automatically populated there for you. You don't have to, key that in. All right, but if I come over here and I click on search, then it's going to show me all 470s, all right, within EPIC since 2016, all right, that you filed. Now, what you can do, if you'll see the column headers here, what I typically do is I'll click on the funding year, click it twice. The first time you click it, it's going to show the oldest first. Click it a second time, it's going to bring the most current to the top. All right, just to make sure that you grab the right 470. All right, but it's going to show you, what's the nickname of that 470, again, the funding year, the build entity name, all right, just to make sure everything's correct. Really important, though, it's going to show you what we call the allowable contract date. That is the 29th day from whenever you filed that 470. All right, so it's going to, put it there, I'm going to say in your face to make sure, did you wait your 28 days? If you point to this 470 and that allowable contract date hasn't been reached yet, it's not going to let you move forward. It's going to tell you, sorry, you can't use this 470. You've not waited your 28 days. All right, because basically save us from ourselves. Now, the very last column here, it's indicating all of the service types that were listed on that 470. All right, because remember with the 470, where we have to separate, the 471s, you could put on the very same 470 your bandwidth for your branches, hotspots for the bookmobile, anything under category 2, all of that can be on the same 470. All right, or you have the option if you want to, file multiple 470s. But it's going to show us here, here's the specific service type listed on that form. All right, so again, if you're filing multiple forms, just, help you pinpoint which one to select. All right, so I'm going to check the box and say, yep, that's the 470 I want to reference. And I click on Save and Continue. Now, let me show you what it looks like if you're going to file using OPLIN's 470 for the hotspots, all right? It will change the way you point to the 470 a little bit, all right? So when it asks, did you file a 470, you would still indicate yes. You would say 3 bids. Only here, when it's asking for you to search for the 470, remove your build entity number. Like I said, it's going to auto-populate that, all right? So you want to be sure and take the build entity number out, and then you're going to key in the 470 number, all right, for the form that OPLIN filed. And it's that 250006641. All right, so you'll key in that number and then click on search. It'll come, basically pop up in that table, check the box to the left to say, this is the 470 that I want to reference. All right, are there any questions on that? Okay. All right, but very important, all right, if you're going to reference OPLIN's 470, make sure you key in that number there. All right, so once we click on continue, then it's going to ask us, is there an account number? Again, that's not a required field. It's up to you if you want to go look that up and, key it in. Not required though. Then it's asking us to identify the service provider. Now, you can search by their SPIN, the service provider identification number, or you can search by the company name. I strongly recommend putting in the SPIN, all right, because some providers, like our cell providers, all right, depending on, the area of the country, the region, they may have multiple SPINs, all right, and you want to make sure that you're grabbing the right one. All right, so typically service providers will put the SPIN on, on the contract or on the quote that they send you. All right, if not, all right, reach out to the sales rep and ask for sure. Okay, so here I just plug in the SPIN, I click on search, it comes back with the search results. It'll show you the company name, again, verify, make sure you didn't transpose numbers. All right, I'm pointing to the wrong provider. But yep, that's the one that I want. Save and continue. Okay, so now it's asking us up front, is this a multi-year contract, yes or no? All right, well, let's say it's a 5-year contract for the bandwidth for my branches. So I'll say yes to the multi-year. Now it's asking, what's the date you awarded your contract? This is the date that should be listed, with your signature on that contract. What's the date that, whoever had the authority, to sign that contract? All right, what's the date it was awarded? All right, and again, this date has to be on or after that allowable contract date. All right, that 29th day. All right, so I plug in the date and I click on save and continue. All right, now we've been getting this questions. If you've gone through this contract module before, you've seen this question. It's asking, does this contract include voluntary extensions? All right, some contracts will state that at the end of the term, I was looking at one earlier today where it was a 3-year contract. And then it had language that you could do 2 1-year voluntary extensions. All right. So it means that after, when you get to the end of the initial term, if that language, it has to be clearly stated in the contract. If you have that language, you could decide, okay, I'm happy with the service. I'm going to extend it another year. All right. You want to put something in writing, let your service provider know that you want to use one of those voluntary extensions. All right. But you could extend the contract without having to go back out to bid again. All right. So again, check the contract. It has to be clearly stated. Now, some contracts, though, just a heads up, some contracts will have language saying that we see this like with like commercially available internet, DSL type connections. It may say that, at the end of the initial term, let's say it's a 2-year contract, this contract's going to auto renew every year until you contact us to say you don't want the service anymore. All right. That does not qualify. USAC refers to that as an evergreen contract. All right. With voluntary extensions, you have to have a hard expiration date in the future. It cannot be this auto renewal. All right. So if your contract says it's going to auto renew each year, then at the end of the initial term, you have to file a new 470. Right, you have to go back out to bid again. So don't confuse those two. Again, a lot of information. Let me know if you have questions. All right. So here I've indicated that yes, this particular contract did allow for two extensions. So the portal will ask us, okay, if you use these extensions, what's the date? If you use them all, what's the date the contract will expire? Well, let's say it's a 5-year contract with 2 1-year extensions. All right, where the contract with the initial 5 years would expire June 30th, right? 2030. Okay. So I could add 2 more years to this. So that would take me out to June 30th, 2032. I have 2 extensions left, right? We haven't touched those yet. Then it's going to ask, what's the total remaining length of the contract in months? Don't know why it asks the question this way, but it does. Okay, well, this is a 60-month contract. And, according to, the contract language, I could tack on 2 more years. All right, so 60 months plus the additional 24, 84 months. All right, like I said, I don't know why it's presented this way, but it is. All right, so if you have the voluntary extensions, answer the questions. If there is no language about voluntary extensions, you answer no and you're good to go. All right, so save and continue. Then it's going to ask, are there pricing confidentialities? All right, yes or no. 99.9% of the time, the answer is no. If you answer yes, it has to be based on a court order, some legal document. And if you answer yes, you're going to have to upload that legal document. All right. So again, typically the answer is no there. Save and continue. And I apologize, I didn't point out, but you can see the breadcrumbs here across the top, all the various steps that we've gone through. All right. So we're just about done here. So we'll click on save and continue. All right, now it's going to give us the summary. This is how you answered all of those questions. All right, check it over carefully. Did you put the right 470, the right number of bids, the right award date? All right. Did you upload the correct document? All right. Make sure everything is correct. If you see that, you made a typo, all right, just keep clicking on back. It'll take you back one page at a time, all right, to get to whatever section you need to correct. All right. Because, like I said, once you click on complete, that submits this contract record and it's in there for good. All right. You would have to go through all those steps again, all right, to be able to, provide the correct information. All right. So check it over carefully. All right. Well, I'm going to say, yep, that's all correct. I'll click on complete. Now, once I do that, it says, okay, here are the submitted contracts. All right. Now, if you had started something previously, you didn't get to finish it, this is where you could click on that pull down, choose the draft version. All right. And then you can click on edit. If you have another contract that you need to add, maybe you did the bandwidth for the branches, but now you have the contract for the patron hotspots. All right. We'll click on add a new contract and go through the steps for that contract. All right. Just keep adding them until you're done. Okay. Any questions on adding contracts? Like I said, it's a lot of information. Okay. So now let's talk about filing the 471 itself. Now we're going to start out looking at the traditional category 1, meaning the data transmission and internet access options. All right. And looking at if we have a brand new contract. Now, I mentioned about that admin window closing on January 9th. All right. So like I said, if you didn't update square footage or if the district hasn't updated, the student enrollment and lunch information, everything from funding year 2024 will still be displayed. All right. So there's a couple of ways we can start the 471. The easiest is it from the landing page in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see these shortcuts and you'll see the 471 listed there. All right. That's the easiest way to start it. So I'll click there. All right. And then it's saying, okay, give us a nickname for this form. Because remember, you can have multiple 471s. Do yourself a favor, make it descriptive. Because if you have to go back and pull up a copy of that form, all right, being able to, easily distinguish one from another. All right. So I'm saying that this is my FY2025 Cat 1 bandwidth, all right, for ABC Library. All right. So once I put that in, I can click on Save and Continue. Now, I do want to point out there's also the option here for discard form. All right. So, if you start a 471, you get interrupted, maybe the system times out, that form's going to be out there. You can go back and pick up where you left off. Oftentimes, though, if you've not gotten very far, most people will just start a brand new one. Just know that you still have an incomplete form out there. Usually about April, mid-April, early May, the portal will start sending out emails, these auto-generated emails, letting you know that that you didn't file your 471. That's when I start getting lots of panicked phone calls saying, I know for sure I filed it. It just means that you had a form out there, you didn't finish. So once you finish filing your 471, go in and go up to task and make sure, do you have something incomplete? If so, pull it up and click on discard. That will stop those emails. All right, so we gave it a nickname, save and continue. So let me show you how to go back and find an incomplete form. All right, something that you started previously. So if you're working on this 471 and you get timed out, something happens, you'll see on the portal there, that blue menu bar where it says tasks, simply click there. All right. And any form that you've started, but it hasn't been submitted yet, or you haven't gotten to the page that says, certify, it'll start with the word create. It means something you previously started. All right. And it's going to show you the application number plus whatever nickname you just gave it. All right. So we'll just click there on the hyperlink, picks up where we left off. Okay, so now it's asking, are you the main contact, yes or no? All right, so if you indicate yes, then it's going to basically populate your contact information based on how you logged in. All right, so if you logged in as somebody else, the other person, however you logged in, that's whose name's going to show up as the contact. That's the individual, the email address that will get the notifications if there's any inquiries, all right, review questions. Now, if you know that you're going to be away, let's say over the summer, over the summertime, you can put alternate contact information. All right, it's not required. You can leave it blank if you choose. But if you know you're going to be away, but you'll still be willing to answer questions, all right, let the reviewer know. Here's an alternate way of contacting me. Now, I do want to point out here this question about the yes, no, are you the main contact? Just know if you indicate no, you're not the main contact, whatever name you put here has to have a portal account. All right. You cannot manually add a secondary contact here. All right. They have to have a portal account. Okay. So we'll click on save and continue. All right. Yep, we're good. Yep, I'm the main contact. Continue. Okay. So this is where we're seeing a big change to this year's 471. All right. So once we go to this next step, it's going to ask us, what category of service are you applying for on the specific 471 application? Is it the traditional category 1, right? Data transmission and internet access, including hotspots for the bookmobiles. All right. I'm making that distinction here. All right. Or is this off premises category 1? And then they have a note below that, and I blew it up to make sure we could all see that: wireless school bus services and equipment, or Wi-Fi hotspot services and equipment. And again, the key here is off premise, meaning off the library property. All right, so patrons taking hotspots home. And then the third option is our category 2. Now, just a heads up here, one of the reasons they're doing this is they do not want us putting the off-premise hotspots on the same 471 as our traditional category 1. All right, because if we did that, then it's going to hold up your funding decisions for your traditional category 1. So what's going to happen here is USAC's going to look at, once the window closes, after March 26th, what's the total, what we call demand? What's the total dollar amount for our traditional category 1 that's being requested? Then they're going to look at, okay, well, how much was requested in category 2? All right. How much money do we have left over as to how much of the off-premise request will be funded? This is very similar to, the early days of E-rate, before we had category 2, where everybody qualified, for that connectivity equipment, where basically you had to wait to see what that demand was. And most of us never received, the funding. All right. It's going to be similar to that. All right. Where it really is a priority. Our traditional category 1, category 2 comes first. Then they'll wait to see how much money's left for the off premise. And then if the demand is greater, all right, than what, the dollar amount that's available, then they'll start at the highest discount rate and work backwards, all right, until they run out of funds. All right. So again, a lot of information. Let me know if you have questions there. All right. So in this case, this is our, like I said, the bandwidth for our branches. So I'm going to start with the traditional category 1. All right. And then I click on save and continue. Now, once you choose a category and you click on continue, all right, it takes it a couple of seconds, but then the portal basically formats the application. All right. So if you realize, no, I really wanted this to be the off premise, you're going to have to discard this form and start over. All right. Once you choose a category, you cannot go back and change it. All right. It's just easier, just discard the form and start over. All right, so the next couple of screens, it's just information that the form is, basically pulling from the portal. All right, so, what school district, is the main library associated with, as far as, which student counts do we use? All right, and the square footage. So it's just pulling that information from Epic. All right, so there's nothing you can change here. All right, just click on save and continue. Okay, and now it's saying, okay, now here's all of the buildings that make up this library system. All right, again, you can just verify it. It's also going to show you the breakdown of square footage, all right, for each of those buildings. So look at that number. And again, Penny, your comment that one of your sites, the 9,300 square foot, expansion, All right. So you can look at what's the square footage for that specific site. All right. And then in the narrative, all right, correct the square footage there. Okay. So we just click on save and continue. All right. Now it's going to show us here's your discount rate for category 1 versus category 2. All right. Save and continue. All right. So this is where we're at on the 471 creating funding requests. Now the portal does not call this part 1 and part 2, but I do. All right, because if you have a question, it makes it easier to distinguish, you know, what part of the form, all right, was the information located. So what I refer to as part 1, this is where we're going to point to the contract that we want to use. All right, this is where we see the narrative. Okay, so how are you purchasing this? Part 2 is where we're going to indicate what's the bandwidth speed, what's the cost, what's the quantity, you know, which library sites are using the service. All right, all of that kind of, you know, that kind of detail. All right, but we always start first with clicking on Add FRN, completing that part 1. All right, so I'm going to click on the blue Add FRN. And then it starts with asking for a nickname, all right, for this specific funding request. Because remember, you can have multiple funding requests on the same application. All right, where I'm saying, well, this is my my FY2025 bandwidth. All right, you can put in the, you know, the provider's name, however you want to name this. Now, let's say this is my example where this is a brand new contract. All right, so you filed a 470, newly awarded. So FY 2025 is going to be year 1 of that contract. All right, so when it's asking, is this a continuation? Even though it's, you know, maybe you didn't change service providers, it's a new contract. All right, so you're going to indicate that this is no, this is not a continuation, all right, from a previous funding year. This is a whole new contract term. All right, now we see this option here for copying. Do not click on that, right, because this is all new information. You do not want to copy from last year. Now, the service type, that's already selected for us. Under this traditional category 1, that's the only option there. All right, so we'll click on continue. All right, now this is where that contract module really comes into play. So it's asking basically, how are you purchasing this service? Is this contracted? All right, is this based on a contract, tariff, or month to month? And remember, we're going to look at a month to month option here shortly. All right, well, this is that 5-year contract, right, that I've already uploaded. So I'll click on contract and continue. Then it says, well, okay, we'll point to that contract. All right, so this is why it's so important to get that contract uploaded beforehand. Okay, because if you didn't, you'd have to stop the form, complete the step, get back in again. All right, so again, the default is to search for, you know, based on your build entity number. That's fine. All right, so it's already populated there for me. So I come over and I click on search, and then it's going to show me all the contracts, all right, that have been uploaded into the portal. All right, now similar, you know, how we searched for the 470, we could sort it. All right, same thing here. You can sort by the award date. So you can pull, you know, click it twice and it pulls the most current to the top. All right, so again, just look at the nickname, the award date, making sure you're clicking on the right contract. So we say, yep, that's the one we want. We check the box to the left and we click on continue. Okay, now when we were uploading the contract, it asked when was the contract awarded? And if it had voluntary extensions, if you use those extensions, when will it expire? All right, so now it's showing us that information up above. All right, again, helping us make sure that, yep, you grab the right contract record. Okay, so all of that detail there. But now it's asking for some additional contract information. Very first question, it's what's the service start date? So it's the first day of this upcoming funding year that you want E-rate to cover. All right, July 1, right? The first day of the funding year. So when it's a brand new contract, that service start date is auto-populated for us. All right, because the system makes the assumption this is a brand new contract and you want it to start with the start of the funding year. All right, so that's already populated for us. But then to the right, it's asking what's the date your contract expires for the current term of the contract. All right, so remember, voluntary extensions are just that, they're voluntary. You may get to the end of the contract the original term and decide, no, I want to put this out to bid again. I don't want to extend it. All right. So again, look at the terms of the contract. So if this is a new 5-year, right, then we would say, right, based on those terms, it will expire June 30th, 2030. All right. And that we'll have to key that in. This is probably the hardest part because it means going back, right, checking the term of the contract, counting up. When does this actually expire? All right. So again, the date without the extensions factored in. All right. Click on continue. Now, it does ask this question about fiber key information. This is only if you're doing like a big fiber build out, right? I don't see this happening with, many of the libraries. I've seen some school districts do this, where they want to lay fiber, say to connect their schools where they're going to own the fiber. And there's some, large installation cost. All right. For most of us, the answer is going to be no. All right. This would only be for that special construction, a very costly fiber build out. All right. So we'll indicate no there and then continue. Okay, so now this is taking us to the narrative. This is the last step in this, what I call part 1. All right, so here's the narrative. So just give a brief, explanation. All right, this is bandwidth to 4 library branch locations. It can be as simple as that, because once we get into part 2, we're going to indicate what's the bandwidth speed and the cost. All right, that kind of detail. All right, but this is also, I mentioned that if your square footage is incorrect, all right, so again, Penny's, question about the 9,300, square foot extension. All right, this is where you would want to indicate, and please note the correct square footage for ABC branch is, all right, and state that correct square footage. All right, make sure that you put that in the narrative. All right, any questions there at all? And Drew, yes, the 470 tutorial, we have a recording of that, plus my handout. It's out on the resource page. It will step you through filing the 470 to receive bids. All right, but lots of different examples. All right, but let me know if you go to file a 470 and you get stuck. But yes, the tutorial will cover that. All right, so that's everything now for the part 1. So let's continue, right, with part 2. So it gives us the option here. It says save and add manage FRN line item. All right, so when we talk about line items, if you have, let's say you have 5 branches, and maybe you're getting different bandwidth levels. Maybe you have 2 branches that you're going with a gig. Maybe you have another branch where maybe you're only doing 100 meg. All right. So if there's different bandwidth levels, meaning there's different cost, then we have to add different line items, all right, to basically account for all of the pieces and parts, right, of the service within that contract. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and click on FRN line items. And then it says, well, okay, well, you don't have any line items yet. So we click on add new line items. All right, so I'll click there. So again, go back, look at that contract, right? Are there different bandwidth levels, different costs, for the various sites? Now we start out, in essence, explaining our network, all right, or excuse me, our WAN, I should say. All right, so it's asking here, what's the purpose? The very first purpose is internet access that includes a connection from any applicant site directly back to the internet provider. All right. So if it is, again, say a circuit that's going from a branch back to, your local ISP, that's the first purpose. All right. For most of our libraries, when we're filing, it's those what we call point-to-point circuits. If you have a circuit going, say, from your branch, it's coming back to your main library, and then you're using the circuit that OPLIN provides to get back, to get out to the internet. All right. So if it's that what I call a point-to-point circuit, all right, it's the second purpose. And this is what I see most libraries for this type service selecting. It means a data connection between 2 or more sites entirely within your network. All right. It's making up your wide area network. All right. So that's the example we're going to look at here. All right. So then it says, okay, well, what's the function? So when I click on the pull down for function, we're going to see, okay, is this a fiber circuit? Is it copper? Is this wireless? Other or miscellaneous? Other or miscellaneous may be, say you might have taxes, some other costs that you want to account for. All right, that would be a separate line item. All right, but here I'm saying, okay, this is a least lit fiber circuit. So I'm selecting fiber. Then we get this very long list of every imaginable type fiber connection, all right, known, all right. The safest as you go through the list, it's toward the bottom. Choose the option that says Ethernet. All right, that seems to be the option that meets most of our needs. All right, so function is fiber, type of connection is Ethernet. Right, and then I can click on Save and Continue. All right, and again, we'll talk about the Cabio, what we call commercially available here shortly. Okay, so now it's saying, okay, so for this line item, what's the bandwidth level? What's the upload download speed? Well, if it's that fixed fiber, that least lit fiber, the upload download speed is typically the same. All right, again, just look at your contract. If it just says 1 gig, all right, a 1 gig circuit, then it's the same both up and down. All right, so we'll start here. What's the bandwidth download speed? Let's say it's that 1 gig circuit. I'll put in 1. Then I click on the pull down and indicate, is this in gigs or megs? All right, so I indicate it's 1 gig. Now it automatically will copy, all right, the same values, the 1 gig. It will get copied for the upload speed as well. You don't have to key that in a second time. All right, it'll auto-populate that for you. And then to the right, it's asking, is this bandwidth burstable? Again, 99% of the time, the answer is no. If you indicate yes, then it's going to want to know what speeds it will burst up to. All right. The way I look at this, if I have no idea what they're asking here, where would I even find that information? Typically, the answer is no. Okay. So typically, our least lit fiber would not be burstable bandwidth. So I'm going to indicate no, save and continue. Okay, so now it's asking us some additional questions. It's asking questions trying to really pinpoint the type of connection. All right, who's really receiving it? How is it really connected? It would be much easier if they just let us upload a WAN diagram. All right, I keep saying that every year, but that hasn't happened yet. All right, so now it's asking some additional yes/no questions. So the first question is this a direct connection to a single school, library, or NIF, a non-instructional facility for internet? All right, if it is that connection coming to a branch directly from the local ISP, then the answer would be yes for this first question. But because these are the circuits between our branch going back, say, to our main library, those point-to-point circuits, I'm going to answer no to the first question, right? Because it's not going directly back to my ISP. And then the second question, is this a connection between eligible schools, libraries, or non-instructional facilities? A connection that provides a wide area network, all right? My point-to-point circuits, I would answer yes to the second question. Now, just a little hint here. If you answered yes to both or no to both, you're going to get this pop-up, all right? This pretty pink pop-up that says you can't select yes to both, but you also get the error message if you say no to both, all right? Now, it does ask, does this service include firewall? All right, go back, check your contract. For the libraries, typically that answer is no. All right, so I'm going to indicate no. And if you're not sure, check with the service provider. At the point you're filing the 471, you've already made a purchasing decision. So it's perfectly fine for a service provider to help you on a 471. All right, they have to be hands off on a 470. 471, you've already made the decision to go with the company. All right, so save and continue. So now it's asking, okay, so what's the cost? So when we look at the form, on the left-hand side is going to be the monthly recurring cost. Left-hand side, monthly recurring. Right-hand side, are there any one-time costs? All right, so is there an installation cost? All right, just know that you cannot leave any of the fields when it's asking for cost, you cannot leave any of the fields blank. All right, so if there is no cost associated, put in a 0. Okay, so this is monthly, we've got that monthly service cost. I go back, I look at my contract, and it's okay, these 1 gig circuits. Let's say it's 3 circuits going out to my 3 branches. My contract shows it's $500 a month. It's asking, are there any ineligible costs? No. So I put in 0. And then what's the monthly quantity? So it's how many circuits. All right. So $500 a month per circuit, and I have 3 circuits. On the right-hand side where it says one-time cost, if there's no install cost, which is typically the case, all right, then I'm going to put zeros there. 0 for the per unit cost, the ineligible, and the quantity. Now, when I do that, it's going to do the math for us. I do want to point out here, the months of service, it shows 12 months. We didn't have to, key that in. The system is looking at basically that July 1 date that we put in, and this goes until the end of the funding year, June 30th. All right. So it knows that we're asking for 12 months of service. All right. We didn't have to key anything additional. It's all based on the dates that you entered. So a heads up there. If you look at that and you see that, yeah, I really needed 12 months, but it's showing anything less than 12, you need to go back and check the dates that you entered. All right. So again, just a heads up there. All right. So it just does the math. $500 times 3 circuits. Okay. $1,500 times 12 months. That's $18,000. All right. Discount rate isn't shown yet. All right. The portion that E-rate's going to cover. All right. But I just click on save and continue. Then it's asking, okay, are all entities, using the service? Well, let's say this is a 1 gig circuit to, let's say the West branch, but we're going to add another line item for the East branch, which maybe is only instead of a gig, it's 500 meg. All right. So basically, who's receiving these circuits? Okay. So if it's not going out to all of the branches listed in the portal, all right, or you may, look at and have bookmobiles listed. Okay. Well, these circuits don't, they're not serving the bookmobiles. All right. So answer accordingly. So is every entity for this organization receiving the service? Yes or no? If no, then you check the box to the left of which library locations are receiving the circuits. All right. And then click on add, and then it'll come back with a confirmation. All right. Did that make sense to everyone? Okay. Let me know if it did not. All right. So again, we'll click on add. It comes back confirmation. Okay, here are the sites using the circuits. All right. And then as soon as I click on continue, it comes back and says, okay, you've answered all the questions to add, this that line item. All right. So again, my example, let's say you've got 1 branch at 1 gig on this contract. You've got another branch at 500 meg. All right. We need to account for that. Then we would click on add new line item. All right. And then add the information for that piece. All right. Now, if you realize that you made a mistake when you were adding all of that information for this first line item, if you need to correct it, just come over here and click. You'll see the hyperlink. All right, where it ends in .001. If you just click there, all right, it'll take you back to all of those steps. All right, and you just click, keep clicking on continue, and you can make your corrections. All right. If there are no other, costs that you need to associate with this, you can go ahead and click on save and continue. All right. Now it's also showing us here, here's the total amount, that $18,000. Now, we're done adding those line items, and I click on continue. All right. Then it's going to come back and says, okay, now you have a funding request. All right. So it's going to give us, here's the funding request number, the nickname you gave it, how many line items, right, make up this funding request. But now it's taken that 18,000 and multiplied it by your discount rate. All right. So let's say you're at 80%. All right. Here's the amount, the FRN calculation. This is how much you're asking, the dollar amount you're asking E-rate to cover. All right. So again, just so you understand how, how this is calculated. Now, if you want to add another funding request, maybe you've got the basically a hotspot for the bookmobile. Okay. Or maybe it's that, that DSL connection, say a different contract for a remote branch. All right. Anything that falls under our traditional category 1. If you want to put that on the same 471, click on Add FRN, and you would go through those steps again. All right. Now, I do want to point out, because it's not clear when you're in the portal, if you realize that you made a mistake in that date, all right, like when the service starts and when it ends, anything in part one, if you need to make a correction, all right, the way you get back to part one is you have to check the box. Like I said, it's not clear, all right, in the portal. You have to click the box to the far left, and then you can click on Edit FRN. That will take you back to that part one. All right, so just a heads up there. If you want to make a correction to anything within that part two, right, the cost, the quantity, all right, if you need to make any corrections there, click on the funding request number. All right, that's one of the ways you can do that. All right. If there are no other funding requests that you want to add on this 471, then to finish it out, you would have to click on Review FCC 471. All right, review it and then submit it. All right, any questions on any of that? I know, like I said, it's a lot of information. Okay. I never know that I do a good job explaining or stunned silence, and I understand the stunned silence. Okay,
Lori, I have a question. This is Penny.
Hey, Penny.
I am taking over E-rate again. Someone else has done it the last couple of years, or not done it, I should say. And I'm interested, and I know you're not on the portal, but is there a way that I can go in and look to see what contracts are current, to kind of follow up on what we might have done before?
Sure.
Well, mostly I'm interested in the fiber line. We run directly from OPLIN to Geneva, and I know that we have E-rate on that, and I'm guessing that it was a multi-year contract that I'm going to need to, reiterate in a 471 this year, and I'm just trying to figure out where we are.
Sure. You can go follow the steps to pull up already submitted contracts. All right. So when under that My Entity, you can click on the library system name. And Christine said she could work on that with you, and I can as well. But yeah, you can go back, you can look at any contract that has been uploaded in the system. And if the prior person uploaded a copy of the contract, you can access it there. You can also pull up your previous 471, all right, and look at the information there, because the dates would have been provided. But again, Christine or I can help you find that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's always a challenge when you're coming in, behind somebody else, trying to pick it apart. All right, but thank you for that question. All right, any other questions there? All right, let's talk about adding month-to-month funding requests. All right, so month-to-month, again, this could be if you have a hotspot already, say for your bookmobile, and maybe when you contracted with that, with the cell provider for that hotspot, after the initial term, you start using it month to month. All right, meaning that you're not locked into some contract term. You could end the service at any time and there's no penalty. All right. This is also typically when we're doing what we call CABIO. That's that commercially available broadband. All right. Like a DSL service. All right. So oftentimes those as well. All right. You're not locked into a contract, or you may, like initially, it may be a 12-month or 24-month initially. And then after that, you just keep using the service. All right. Excuse me. So that's what I'm talking about here when we talk about month to month. Now, with month to month, anything except a CABIO type service, all right, we have to file a 470. So if you do have that hotspot for your bookmobile, for a kiosk, you need to plan on filing a 470. You can use a current bill as a bid response. All right. And we covered all of that when we did the 470 training, but let me know if you have questions. All right. With the commercially available, basically the FCC has said that type service, for the most part, it's already cost effective, right? So if you have a DSL service, saying going out to a branch, as long as the bandwidth is a minimum 100 meg by 10, all right, and the monthly recurring cost per site, all right, because maybe you have this for a couple of branches, all right, the monthly recurring cost cannot exceed $300. The FCC has said that's cost effective, so you don't have to go out and get bids for that. This is the only time we get a pass on filing a 470. You're going to hear me mention this a couple of times this afternoon. All right. All right, just checking Drew's question there. All right, so let's click on Add FRN. All right, just like we saw before, all right, what's the nickname? So I'm saying this is my FY2025 bookmobile kiosk, all right, request. So because this is monthly recurring, I had to file a new 470. I'm going to say no to the continuation, right? I am not going to copy, just like we saw before, data transmission's already selected. So I'll click on continue. And I also want to point out here, right, because this is a hotspot for my bookmobile, it falls under a different set of rules than the hotspots for patrons, right? That patrons are taking home, using off premise, using off, library property. All right, so I need to make the distinction there. Okay, so it's asking, how are you purchasing? Well, there's no contract. All right, so month to month. All right, it's what we're using. So I click on continue. All right, so again, that Cabio, right, commercially available, business class internet, right? If you met that criteria, no 470 required. All right. Now, because there is no contract showing the cost, you want to be prepared. Take a current, go ahead and pull a copy of a current bill, right? Say for that hotspot, all right, or that Cabio service, and put that in your files, because we've not uploaded anything, right? So the reviewers are going to want to verify. If you said, the monthly cost for that Cabio service is, $89 a month, they're going to want to see a bill to prove that. All right, so get a copy of a current bill, put that in your files. All right, so I choose month to month, continue. All right, so now it's asking basically, was a 470 file? Well, this is for that hotspot for my bookmobile, and I filed a 470. How many quotes did you get? All right, and was the 470 filed, yes or no? Here I've indicated yes, right, because it's that bookmobile hotspot. And then I'll go out and I'll search for that posted 470, similar to what we did when we were in the contract module. All right. Now, if this is that commercially available service, that Cabio, where you're not required to file a 470, right? On this question here, the yes, no, you'll indicate no. But remember, some fields you cannot leave them blank, right? So if it's that commercially available service, indicate no, I didn't file a 470 because I didn't have to, but under the bids received, put in 0. All right. That's fine. Okay, but if you did file the 470, such as like for the bookmobile hotspot, indicate yes, click on search, point to the 470 that you filed where you asked for pricing, right? You asked for quotes for that hotspot. Check the box to the left and continue. Just like we saw in the contract module, do you have an account number? If so, you can plug that in. If not, it's not required. You put in the SPIN, all right, search for the service provider. Here I put that service provider identification number. All right, I click on search. Yep, that's my company. I check the box to the left. All right, click on continue. So again, we did not have to go through that contract module, right? But we still have to provide a lot of that same information. All right, so here it's asking for the dates. All right, service start date, because I'm not copying from a previous year. It automatically put in July 1, 2025 for me. Don't have to do anything there. But then it's asking, when does the service end? When it's month to month, meaning you're not in a contract term, we put the end of the upcoming funding year. All right, so in this case, it'll be June 30th, 2026. All right, and then I click on continue. Okay, pricing confidentiality, just say no, right? Click on continue. When you get to the fiber, those fiber questions, again, there's no big install here. We'll click on no and continue. All right, just like we saw before. So now it's the narrative. So here I'm just simply saying, 2 mobile hotspots to be used for our bookmobile. All right, to be used by our bookmobile and our kiosk. All right, you can explain it there. All right, so now we still need to add the cost, right? So we'll click on Add Manage FRN Line Items, just like we did before. I'll click on Add the new FRN funding, the line item. Okay, now this time when it's asking for the purpose, all right, again, it's that hotspot for the bookmobile. So it's basically providing internet access, right? So I'm going to choose the first option here, the first purpose, all right, internet access. And then for the function, all right, this time I'm going to select wireless, all right, and then the type of connection, data plan for portable device. All right. So again, if it's the hotspot for the bookmobile or the kiosk that allows you to do, conduct library business, right? This is how you would, these are the options you would want to select. All right. And then I click on Save and Continue. So what's the download upload speed? Well, if I've got a 4G or a 5G hotspot, I put 4 gigs or 5 gigs. The reviewers typically don't question that. All right. So go ahead and put in, like I said, if it's 4G or 5G. And then no to the burstable. All right, and continue. Okay, those yes, no questions. Well, this is providing internet, right? We're getting that internet access directly from the provider. So this time I'm going to answer yes to the first question and no to the second one, right? Because it's not providing connection between my library branches. And no, there's no firewall service. All right, and then continue. Okay, then we put in the cost. So again, look at, you can look at your current bill. All right. If you've got a new quote from your cell provider, what's that monthly recurring? Now, because this is under our traditional category 1 rules, right? The hotspot cost for the bookmobile or the kiosk, we're not limited to that $15 like we are with the patron hotspots. All right. Again, I know that makes it really confusing. All right, but we're talking 2 different services here. Okay, so again, my hotspot for my bookmobile, I look at my bill, let's say it's $39.99 a month. All right, so I plug that in, zero cost is ineligible, and I have 2 hotspots. All right, and then for the one-time cost, I'm plugging in zeros because I cannot leave those blank. All right, save and continue. Okay, so now it's asking, is everyone using this hotspot? If you have a bookmobile listed as an entity, right, you can indicate no and then check the box to the left of the bookmobile. If you don't have the bookmobile or the kiosk listed as an entity, point to the main library. All right, because it would be tied to the main library location. All right, and then you can add that. All right, save and continue. It comes back with a confirmation. All right, and now if you've accounted for all the line items, all the costs for those those hotspots, we'll click on Save and Continue, just like we did before. Okay, so that's month to month, and that's pretty quick. All right, please let me know if you have questions. All right, if I totally confused you there. Right, but month to month, it's pretty straightforward. All right, if there are no questions, let's look quickly at copying an FRN. This is probably one of the best things USAC did with the portal to allow us to copy from the previous funding year. All right, so this is something that we would use. Let's say you've got that multi-year contract that you awarded, let's say, 2 years ago. All right, so you're in the middle of, let's say, a 5-year contract. All right, we can copy last year's information, all right, the 2024 funding year information. All right, now I won't go through all the steps of setting up the 471. All right, but we'll click on add an FRN. All right, we give it a nickname. All right, and then is this a continuation from a previous year? And I would indicate yes. Then I would plug in the 2024 funding request number. And I'll show you, a place that you can grab, quickly, easily grab that information. All right, so it's yes, this was based on a previous year. Here's the 2024 funding request number. A 2024 FRN will start with 2499, just a heads up there. All right, now it does give us a note here that during the 471 review for 2024, if a reviewer found a mistake, maybe you transpose numbers to the cost, whatever. If a correction was made on that 2024 471, the corrected information will copy over. All right, which is, like I said, they did a great job on this copy feature. All right, so I'm going to click on copy because I do want to pull over last year's information. Then it's going to ask us, even though we've already said, here's our previous year's funding request number, it's going to make us go out and search which funding request do you want to copy. You have to put, basically plug it in a second time. You can search by the 471. The easiest, just use the FRN. We've already, copied and pasted it up here, right? So I'll just pop it in here again. Okay, search by FRN number. All right, I click on search. All right, it takes it a few seconds. It goes out, it finds it. It's going to show us, okay, here's the 471 that was listed on. All right, just repeats that number back. All right, the funding, basically the nickname that you gave it for 2024. All right, everything to make sure that you're grabbing the right funding request. All right, so I check the box to the left that, yep, that's the correct one. And then I click on continue. All right, so let me show you, there's a number of different ways you can go out and find, those numbers. All right, probably the easiest, if you go to the E-Rate Central site, all right, so it's just e-ratecentral.com. The hardest part is it's going to ask you to plug in your funding request number. All right, so when you go to the site, you scroll down a little ways and you'll see the option for the history search. All right, so we plug in your funding request, your billed entity number. All right, so plug that in and you click on the little pointer. Then it's going to come back with all of your history, right, back to 1998. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see where it says FY, that's the funding year. So if I click on 2024, then it's going to say, okay, here are the funding requests that you had on the 2024 Form 471. All right, it'll show us the service provider's name, and it's okay, here's the one we want to copy. All right, you can just, basically highlight it, copy and paste. All right, but again, this is by far the easiest way to get the information. Okay, it's the one that I typically use. All right, so once we come back here, all right, once we check the box to the left and I click on continue, all right, it's going to sit there and spin. All right, you're going to get this little spinning indicator, right, where it's going out and it's searching for that funding request. Now, it will not advance on its own, all right? So don't sit there and wait, 20 minutes waiting for it to move on. Give it about a minute and click on, you'll see the refresh button there in the corner, right? Click on it. If nothing happens, it means it hasn't finished loading. Give it about 10, 15 seconds, click on refresh again, right? Once it's done, then you're going to get this, this pop-up that says FRN has been successfully copied. Now, I've highlighted here in yellow, just as a heads up, when we're copying from a previous year, the example I gave you earlier for a brand new contract, it automatically put July 1st as the service start date. When we copy, we have to, we're going to have to key in all the dates ourselves. All right. It was basically an issue that when they first started doing the copy, it copied in the previous year's number and it caused all kinds of technical issues. All right. So the fix was simply remove the dates. So just a heads up, you'll need to be prepared to key those in. All right. So once we get that successfully copied notification, we click on continue. All right, now we just click on continue a lot, right? It's going to show us what it copied over, all right? And you don't change things. You can't change things right here, all right? So we just keep clicking on continue. So it's going to show us, okay, this is how you said you were purchasing for 2024. It's contract, okay? Continue. All right, so now it's going to show us, here's the contract that was associated previously, right? Now, this is where you have to provide the dates, all right? So service start date, type in 7/1/2025, or you can click on the calendar, right? Select that. And then what's the contract expiration date? Again, this is probably the hardest part, right? Because if you're in year 3 of a 5-year contract, you need to go back and verify when does this current contract expire, all right? So again, this is the hardest part here. All right, go back, verify when does this current contract, when will it expire? All right, plug that date in. All right, and then you click on continue. It's going to show you, however, that fiber question, that yes, no question, however that was answered. Again, it's grayed out. All right, it's just copied over. We click on continue, and then we're going to see whatever information was put in the narrative last year. All right. So again, it also copied everything under part 2, right? How many circuits, what's the monthly recurring cost, all of that detail. So if nothing has changed, you're pretty much done with this funding request. I mean, it's pretty quick. All right. So if nothing has changed, the cost is still the same. Just click on Save and View Funding Request. All right. And then we're going to see the table that says, okay, there's another funding request out there. And here's the amount of funding that you're requesting. All right. Now, if you want to drill down, let's say, a cost changed for some reason. All right. You would have to click on the funding request number and then the line item number. All right. And you can make, changes, corrections if need be. All right. Typically, we don't have to make a change. All right. But again, copying over is very, very easy. All right. Any questions there? All right. And then you've got the screenshots in the PDF that you can follow along. All right. Any questions at all? Okay. All right, let's talk about the off-premise category 1. All right, so patron hotspots. If I could get a show of hands, if you could show, just show of hands, or if you want to put it in chat. Sorry, my phone just rang. I apologize. So if you wouldn't mind, let me know how many of you are planning on applying for the patron hotspots. Like I said, you can just pop it there in chat or just raise your hand. All right, I'm just curious. All right, because I've heard from a number of libraries that are interested in this, and especially the fact that you can use the 470 from OPLIN, right, and save you having to do the bidding piece. Excellent. So thank you for sharing that with me. Okay, so again, I'm not going to show you every step for the 471. All right, but once you start it, you give it the nickname. When you get to this screen, obviously you're going to choose, all right, the center option, the off-premise category 1. All right, save and continue. All right, and then you click on continue, all of that information it's pulling from the portal, right, populating it on your form, right, until you get to add FRN. Now, remember, before you start this, make sure that you've gotten that contract, even if you're using the OPLIN 470 that you've reached out to, be it T-Mobile, CDW, AT&T, right? And you've gotten that contract and you've signed and dated that. All right, and you've gone through the contract module and you've gotten that uploaded. All right, so we click on add FRN just like we did before. We complete that, what we call the part 1. Right? So we're going to give it a nickname. Here I just said FY2025 patron hotspots. All right, because this is a brand new contract, we're going to indicate no, right? It's not a continuation from the previous year. We are not copying anything, right? Now, they have added, right, specific service types around the patron hotspots. So when we come to service, right, we'll click on the pull down. All right, and you'll see where it says Wi-Fi hotspot service and equipment. All right, so again, that's what you're going to check. All right, and then continue. It is smart enough if you're filing as a library that because Wi-Fi on school buses, all right, that's also eligible. The first time I went to do this for a library, I'm like, well, wait a minute, there's supposed to be the school bus. Well, duh, this is for a library. It's smart enough to know you don't qualify for the school bus Wi-Fi. All right, so again, you'll see the option, right? Hotspot services and equipment. All right, and continue. Okay, so now it's asking, like we saw earlier, how are you purchasing contract tariff month to month? You would indicate contract, continue. All right, go out and search for that contract record you would have already uploaded. All right, check the box to the left and continue. All right, so what's the service start date? Because this is a brand new funding request, not a continuation for a previous year. We'll see that July 1 date already populated for us. And then what's the date your contract expires for the current term of the contract? Now, remember that with the patron hotspots, the max it can be that E-rate will cover is 3 years. All right, based under the current rules. We still don't know what's going to happen, right? Will, with new administration, the White House, will this go away? There is language, throughout the OPLIN 470. It showed up in the bids that, if you move forward and you sign, let's say, a 3-year contract for the hotspots, if this goes away, you're not on the hook, all right, to continue the full contract term. All right, that language is there. All right, so just want to give you that assurance there. But again, the max would be June 30th, 2028, going out those 3 years. All right, so we click on continue. All right, and then we see the narrative, right? So here I said we're seeking service for 100 hotspots to serve our patrons that otherwise would not have adequate internet access off library premises. All right, I mean, you can use that language or not, right? Just making it clear to the reviewers. This specifically is what we're looking for. Now, remember, you may already have the hotspot devices. You might need to add some additional devices because, hotspots have gotten damaged, patrons haven't returned them, whatever, right? But you can ask for service, on a certain number of hotspots, but then you can ask for a lesser number in devices if you choose, right? So here I said, while we currently have 50 functioning hotspot devices, we need to purchase 50 additional devices to meet our patron service demands. All right, so again, just explain if you're asking for service, for one number, but you're asking for a lesser number in devices, just explain that. All right, so once you have that detailed, and again, if you need to update, I would make sure, right, because remember your hotspot budget, it's based on your square footage. So if you need to update the square footage, state it here again in the narrative. All right, make sure you have that stated there. All right, if you did not get it, get the square footage updated by that January 9th date. So now we need to complete the part 2. So I'm going to click on save and add manage FRN line items, add a line item, just like we saw before. All right, so now we have different pull down options here. Now, purpose and function, we don't have to choose anything. All right, so again, the form's already been programmed, all right, designed, all right, around the off-premise hotspots. Okay, so now type of connection, when we click here, is it service? Is it equipment? Is it taxes or USF, the Universal Service Fund fee, or other reasonable fees? All right, so under type of connection, if I'm adding the service, right, I mentioned I have 100 hotspots, I want monthly recurring service, then I'm going to choose the first option where it says wireless internet services that can be delivered with a Wi-Fi hotspot for off-premise use. All right, making that very clear. All right, so I'll choose that first option, save and continue. All right, and then it's, all right, just like before, we can't leave fields blank, right? So on the right hand, the left, I'm being dyslexic today. On the left-hand side, I want to put the monthly cost. So again, whichever vendor, whichever provider I went with, if I'm going with that T-Mobile, the $11.97, whatever that was, I'd plug in that monthly recurring cost. $0 would be considered ineligible. And then what's the monthly quantity? So how many hotspots are you looking for that monthly service? So here I plugged in my 100 hotspots. All right, there is no one-time cost. So I'm going to plug in zeros on the right-hand side, save and continue. Now here, when it's asking, is everyone using the service? Typically the answer is going to be yes, right? If you have 4 branches and you have hotspots at each of those branches that patrons can check out, right? Then everybody in the library system will be utilizing these. All right, so here I've indicated yes. And then I click on save and continue. It'll give you the confirmation to say, okay, here are the library sites you said, that will be recipients of service. All right, just click on continue. All right, so now I can see I've got my line item there. All right, now if you realize again that you made a typo, click on that line item number, you can go back, make your correction. All right, well, I also said I wanted, the hotspot devices, so I can click on add new line item. All right, so this time under type of connection, I'll choose a Wi-Fi hotspot device for off-premise use. So this is the device, the equipment itself. Save and continue. Now, because this is the equipment versus monthly recurring service, this time on the left-hand side for monthly cost, I'm going to plug in zeros. All right. And then I'm going to look at my quote. Okay. What was, it was whatever that, that device quote was. Let's say it was the $90. All right. I plug in $90. Zero is considered ineligible. And then what's the total quantity in hotspot devices I'm requesting? So here I said the 50. All right. Same thing when it asks for, recipients of service, I'll point to all of, my library branches. All right. So I can continue adding line items. Now, on your quote, if there's anything that mentions taxes or the universal service fee, right, we can click on add a line item and add that on as well. All right. If there's a setup fee, all right, let's say if you file your own 470 and there's a setup fee, to set up the hotspot device. All right. There was that option, right, for other reasonable charges, right? That setup fee could be included there. All right. So just keep, adding the cost, make sure everything's accounted for. Right. When you're done adding the line items, we click on save and continue. Okay, so that's how we add the patron hotspots. And just remember, patron hotspots goes on its own 471. All right, any questions on that? I know that was a pretty quick run through. Okay. Okay, so regardless of, whether it's, traditional Cat 1, the off-premise, if you're filing for Cat 2, we'll do separate Cat 2 training, all right? But regardless of the type 471, all right, how we, finish it, it's all the same. Okay, so once we're done adding all of the funding requests to that specific 471 application, we'll click where it says review FCC 471. Now, when we do that, it's not going to take us out of the form, but it does give us the option. Do you want to resume this task later? Do you want to come back later and finish the certification? Versus do you want to go ahead and finish it now? So click on refresh. All right. Just like we saw earlier where we got the spinning indicator, right? It's not going to just move on by itself. Give it about a minute, click on refresh. If it's not finished, generating the 471, display, wait 10, 15 seconds, click on refresh again. All right. Just keep clicking on refresh, right, until it finishes. Now, if you do click on the resume task later, then you'll need to go click on task, right, to pull it up later and finish this off. All right, so once it's done thinking about it, all right, you'll get this display. You'll see it says download document link. All right, it's a draft version of the 471. All right, so now if you want, when you get that draft version, I've offered to do this on the 470s as well. Once you get that draft, it's going to be a PDF version of the 470. Feel free to email it to me. I'm sure you can email it to Christine, right? I'd be glad to look it over, just make sure that, everything looks correct. All right. But you need to send me the draft before you actually submit. All right. So again, it'll just be a draft PDF. But you'll look it over, make sure everything is correct. If so, you check the box, right below the draft document, all right, indicating that, yes, it's, to the best of your ability, it is correct. Now, if you see that when you look at that draft version, if you realize you made a mistake, you made a typo, you forgot to add a line item, right, you can click on edit form. It'll take you back to the beginning of the 471. You just keep clicking on continue till you get to the section that you need to, make the corrections. All right. Now, if everything looks good, we check the box. It gives us two options here. You either have the ability to go ahead, continue to certification. All right. You'll see that option there if you're what we call a full right user. Full right users, can fill out the forms as well as certify. Partial right users will only have the option to send for certification. Now, keep in mind, if you click on send for certification, all right, whoever's going to complete that certification, don't count on them getting an, seeing the email and understanding that there's this next step that they have to complete. All right, let them know, right? get on the phone, go tap them on the shoulder, whatever, let them know that they need to go in and, actually certify the form. All right. And I stress this every year because I've seen some folks, where they click on send for certification and the individual who was supposed to finish it off didn't go in and do that. All right. And then they missed the filing deadline. All right. So again, that's only if you, send it to someone else. Let's say we're full rights. I'll click on continue to certification. All right. Now, when I click on continue to certification, all right, it'll take us to the cert place. But I'm going to show you here. If you clicked on that review task or resume task later, all right, similar to what we saw earlier with tasks, all right, this time I would come up to task and it's going to be labeled as review PDF. All right, so again, just a heads up there. If you do click on that resume, this is where you would go back and find, all right, that PDF copy. All right, this is the certification. So when we look at this, anytime you see a box on the left-hand side, they all have to be checked. You cannot read a certification and say, nah, I'm not comfortable checking that. It will, if you leave a box blank, it won't let you certify. At that point, click on back and send it to somebody else who can complete the certification. All right, but everything on the left-hand side has to be checked. Now it will show us here, here's the total, what we call pre-discount amount that was listed, the combined. So if you've got, two different funding requests, here's the combined, cost before E-rate discounts are applied. Then it'll say, okay, well, here's the amount that you're asking E-rate to cover. So if you're at that 80%, discount rate, it simply does the math. It says, here's the portion that you're wanting E-rate to cover. And then the third dollar amount is, here's the portion that you're going to be responsible for, right? It's that, that 20%, that 30%, whatever, that non-discount portion, right? That E-rate's not going to fund, that you have to be prepared to pay. Now on the form, this field here, it's asking for a budget. This has been on the form since the beginning of the program. All right. And a lot of people get kind of spun up about it. All it's asking here is, do you have the funds to pay for the things that E-rate will not cover, right? In addition to, that non-discount portion. If you're asking for internet, right? Can you pay the electric bill, right? Because you have to have routers and switches plugged in. So basically it's asking, do you have a budget to pay for those things that will be needed, right, in order to receive this service that E-rate's not covering? It can be a made up number, right? Just make it, something reasonable. I have never had them come back and say, prove it, right? The only time it's typically an issue, depends on the reviewer, is if you leave it at 0, right? So put in a reasonable amount, okay? And again, let me know if you have questions there. Don't get, really hung up on it there. Now, really important, there are 2 questions here. They're pulled down and it's a yes, no question. All right, just say no. If you answer yes to either one, you're in E-rate hot water. All right. It's similar questions. It's basically asking you, is your service provider basically giving you the funds or helping you locate funds to pay for the portion that E-rate won't cover? All right. We've had some vendors over the years say, if you go with us, we won't charge you. You're at an 80% discount rate or 90% discount rate. We won't bother invoicing you for the, for that 10 or 20%. That's against the rules. All right. Just say no. All right. This is just a really long page here. All right. And that's where you see the rest of those boxes. Everything has to be checked. All right. Read through, make sure you're comfortable, right? Just keep checking. All right, so again, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see where it says certify. You check there, you click there, you get the pop-up. Here's the penalty for false statements. That's when I take a deep breath, right? Click on yes. All right, once you do that, then it's going to say, okay, here's your, your confirmation, right, that your form was certified. I always either print out a hard copy or I print it to a PDF. I keep a copy of this, right? Because this is my proof. It'll show date and time when I certified the form. We've had some issues the last couple of years, especially when it's close to the, the deadline to file, where the dates, for whatever reason, didn't populate correctly, all right, internally in USAC's database. So this is your proof that you met the deadline. Now, it does have a link here. It says, please click here to access a certified copy. This typically takes a couple of minutes for this document to be generated. But if you want, what we saw earlier was the draft version. This will allow you to, quickly pull up a certified copy. All right. If you want to, print that to a PDF and save that. All right. But once you do that, all right, or you decide, no, I'm not going to bother, just click on close. All right. And that's certifying. All right. And again, let me know if you have questions there. Okay, we're just about done here, I promise. So next steps, what to expect after you file the 471. If you want to go back, we just looked at that link where you could pull down, a certified copy. If you didn't do that, right? Or I think Penny's question about how do you go back and find like a previous form. From the landing page, if you go all the way down to the very bottom of the landing page, there's a section called FCC Forms and Post-Commitment Requests. You can search for the form type, all right, click on the pull down and choose 471 and then choose the funding year. So if I want to look at the one I just filed, I'll choose 2025. It's going to show the application number, right? So if I did one for my bandwidth, for my branches, but then I also did the patron hotspots, right? It's going to show me the application numbers, but then it's going to show the nickname. This is where being descriptive in the nickname, all right, will help you so you can distinguish, which one's which, all right? It'll also show you here's the date and time that the form was certified. All right, but I can click on the application number and it's going to give me some detail. Now, if this is only after, once you submit the 471, if you realize that you made a mistake, maybe you put down the wrong quantity, the wrong cost, but you didn't realize it until, after you've already submitted it. There are some things that you can change on the form. All right, so we drill down to the application. You'll see some menu options there to the far right. It says related actions. You'll see an option to submit modifications. All right. So if you realize you transpose numbers and you put in the wrong dollar amount. All right. And then you can say whether you want to change information about, the application itself or something about an entity. All right. Now, I do have a step-by-step guide, right? It shows you all the screenshots. I won't go through all the steps for doing the modification, but I do have a document out of my resource library that will walk you through making corrections. So again, just want to make you aware that is an option. Okay, so if any of you have filed E-rate before, right, we go through what's called PIA, all right, Program Integrity Assurance. This is being recorded. I won't tell you what the acronym is fondly called, all right? All right, so for the review, you'll get an email letting you know there's some question out there. So the easiest way to get into those questions, again, go down to the very bottom of the landing page, the post-commitment forms and post-commitment requests, search for the 471, click on the application number. There's two ways you can get to the review questions. The easiest is once you click on the application number, you'll see where it says review inquiries. You click there, you see the questions. You can also click on, if you like to click twice, click on related actions, and then you'll see respond to inquiries. All right. Review, respond, takes you to the same spot. But it'll show you any of the questions there. Now, if you do get those review questions and you're not sure how to answer them, reach out to me or to Christine, all right, and we can help you with that. Typically, it's things like if you did month to month, right, they're going to ask for a copy of a bill. So that's pretty standard. If you changed your square footage, like Penny adding the 9,300 square feet, they're going to want a validation that number is correct. All right. So lots of different things that they're going to ask for, but they'll give you, an opportunity, if you realize you made a mistake, provide additional information. I do want to point out, because we've run into this the last couple of years, we've reached out to USAC saying, please cut it out. All right. But it's typical that sometimes the reviewer will reach out to the library to say the school district associated with your library system, they reported this many students and this many qualifying for the lunch program, validate their information. They should not be asking you that. So if you get that question, please let me know. All right. Because again, you as a library cannot validate that information. All right. So have the documentation ready. We talked about like the bills, you've already uploaded your copy of your contract. All right. Just be prepared to answer those questions. So once they've gone through the review process, the happy day is getting your funding letter, the FCDL, funding commitment decision letter. Check it over. Again, I say this every year, just because it says funding letter doesn't mean you were fully funded, right? Check the letter over, make sure everything is correct. All right, because if you realize that, maybe a reviewer had a question out there and you didn't realize it. Again, something we saw this past year, where folks didn't know that there was an inquiry. And the reviewer went ahead and processed the application and denied something because it's, well, you didn't give us the information. All right. You have 60 days from the date the letter was issued to file an appeal. Right. And we start with appealing to USAC first, but it's 60 days from when the letter was issued, not when you finally get around to looking at it. Right. So check it over. Right. Pretty much immediately. Okay, one more thing here. I want to make you aware. There's some other changes, some change options that we have in the portal. And, it's some of these, you can go for years and never have to fill out one of these. Okay, but just know there is an option to do what we call a spin change, because maybe instead of, typing in the service provider's identification number, you went searching for the company name and you chose the wrong spin, right? You can go in and say, sorry, I put in the wrong number. All right. So there are some things that you can do there. Let's say two companies merge. So your spin, you now have a new spin. You can go back after the funding letter's been issued and make that change. Service substitutions. All right. Let's say you put down 500 meg for the bandwidth and you realize, well, it really should have been a gig, right? You can inform USAC, file a service substitution, all right, to make that correction. The last one, the Form 500, I kind of call that a catch-all form. There's lots of different things that you can do with this form. If you put down the wrong start date or expiration date, all right, or maybe it's a contract where it allows you to extend it, right? You can cancel a funding request, lots of different cleanup kinds of things that you can do for the Form 500. If you attend the Category 2 training, I'll talk about some changes that you can make specifically to Cat 2, all right, when we talk about that. Questions? I know
I
it's a
have
lot.
one while folks are still thinking. So for a Form 470, you can cancel a Form 470. For a contract, you cannot cancel or delete that. Form 471, once it is certified, can you cancel it?
You can. You can. You would do that route, that modification request. They make it really easy to cancel. Okay. So you would file that, submit the modification. I'm going to go back there real quick. Give me a second. So yeah, so you would click on application and you'll see an option there to cancel. You can, let's say you had a 471 with two different funding requests. You could cancel just one funding request. You don't have to cancel the entire form. But you would do that under that submit modification.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's not something that happens very often, but I just wanted to ask. Well, thanks for the folks who have stuck with us here. It was a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff going on right now.
Like,
Yeah, it could make your head explode.
Yeah.
I have joked with my boss that dry January may be more of a challenge this year than others. But Lori is wonderful at answering questions. I also try my best. Sometimes I have to ask Lori,
That's
but
fine.
Drew and Penny, I will email you after this and get back with you and make sure that we go over the specific things that you need. But again, Lori's wonderful, and there's her contact information, Yeah, if you're ever in doubt, call so steps for using the OPLIN hotspot bid. Do the bid matrix, select the vendor, ask the vendor for contract, sign and date the contract, upload contract, file 471. Yep, you got it. You got it.
Good job. And again, just reach out if you're again using the OPLIN hotspot. Just reach out, and I sent a couple of emails today for that. Just stating that you want to use the OPLIN quoted pricing. Let them know if how many hotspots you need service for, and how many hotspot devices. So that way they'll send you back a contract, with that detailed information. But they'll let you know if there's other, pieces of information they need. Like if you already have say it's, you're already using T-Mobile and you already have an account number with T-Mobile, or AT&T, whatever, they're going to want that that info. But they'll tell you specifically what they'll need from you.
Okay. Well, thank you again, everyone. You have our contact information. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and continue to stay warm.
Exactly. And I'm sorry, that is the vendor, right? Correct. So when you email the vendor, all right, look at that slide with the contact info, email the vendor, right? And then they'll tell you specifically what it is that they're going to need back from you. All right. And then they'll send you the contract.
And I'm going to add that information from Lori's slide to our website too. So just to have it in a couple different places. Okay. Thank you for asking the question. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Awesome. And then Christine, as soon as it's done generating, I'll send that to you here in the next day or so.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lori.
Sure. Well, thank you all.
See you later.
Hopefully I'll see some of you for category 2.
Exactly.
Thanks. Bye-bye.